Wait a minute, something's happening. Humped shape is rising out of the pit. I can make out a small beam of light against a mirror. What's that? There's a jet of flame springing from that mirror, and it leaps right at the advancing men. It strikes them head on. Lord, they're turning into flames. Now the whole field's caught up by the woods, the barns, the gas tanks of the automobiles.
That was a rare sound clip of an alien attack. An alien attack from the mind of H.G. Wells, broadcasted on CBS Radio back in the late 1930s. The War of the Worlds program sparked nationwide hysteria. Listeners confused the radio play as a legitimate news story. They packed up their cars and fled. They strapped on gas masks. They filled churches to pray. They believed the human race was doomed. Of course, listeners soon realized aliens didn't touch down on Earth, and looking back on the incident today, it's hard to believe how quickly they jumped to conclusions. But similar communication breakdowns still exist despite the overwhelming amount of contact systems. When a piece of information is missing, a little bit of imagination can fill in the gap. Mix those together and you form the foundation for a conspiracy theory.
It is one of the most famous military bases in the world, but the government won't even confirm that it exists. It's Area 51.
But it became home to conspiracy theories involving aliens, flying saucers, and high-level cover-ups.
About an hour northwest of Las Vegas.
As well as the much talked about and long-rumored UFO crash in Roswell, New Mexico.
For 6 decades, it operated in total secrecy. Even the government denied its existence.
About 80 miles north of Las Vegas lies a confidential military base known as Area 51. The government doesn't acknowledge the activities that go on there, or even the fact that it exists. The primary purpose of Area 51 is to test spy planes, but it is perhaps best identified by alleged links to aliens and UFOs. How did its reputation turn from aircraft testing site to extraterrestrial homestead?
Since January 2012, in Massachusetts, we've had 81 sightings. Out of the 81 sightings, 19 remain unidentified after a thorough investigation.
Steve Fermani is the former director and current investigator of the Mutual UFO Network chapter of New England, the largest UFO investigation organization in the world. He's examined hundreds of unexplainable UFO sightings in his 40 years with the organization. When someone submits a request for an investigation, Fermani and his team of volunteers check out the scene. Any sighting that cannot be explained is filed under UFO.
I did investigate a case 2 years ago in New Hampshire. It was a motor vehicle levitation. It was over $4,000 worth of damage done to the underneath part of the car. The vehicle was lifted about 6 feet in the air as a result of a botched abduction attempt.
In this case, when Fermani and his team exhausted all other options, the conclusion came to an alien abduction attempt. In 1947, a smoky, gray-colored, 12-foot-long cylinder crashed down in small-town Roswell, New Mexico. A rancher found the debris covering 200 yards in diameter and phoned the local sheriff. 3 intelligence agents arrived at the scene to evaluate the damage. The next morning, a public information officer sent out a press release saying the agents found what appeared to be a flying disc. But a day later, the press backtracked on the statement and instead referred to the unusual object as a weather balloon. Suspicion surrounding the incident died down until about 30 years later. Major Jesse Marcel, one of the intelligence officials who examined the weather balloon, came forward to reveal his belief that the military was involved in a cover-up and the object was of alien origin.
Got me is that you couldn't even bend it, you couldn't dead it, even with a sledgehammer would bounce off of it. It was not anything from this earth that I'm quite sure of. Because I was being an intelligence officer, I was familiar with just about all materials used in aircraft and our air travel. This is nothing like that.
Further reports said the object was part of a covert government project, which used these types of balloons to detect sound waves from Soviet atomic bomb tests. On the opposite side of the spectrum, Annie Jacobson, author of bestseller Area 51, proposed that the object was actually a flying disc from the Soviet Union, and officers transported it to Area 51 for inspection. The variety of answers and ambiguity of evidence makes the Roswell project the most controversial UFO phenomenon in history.
First started off that Area 51 didn't exist. Now we know it exists. The Roswell UFO crash incident, if that's true, why wouldn't it be possible for them to have this spacecraft at Area 51?
Who knows what really went on at Area 51? Thornton Barnes, codename Thunder, worked as an electronics engineer at Area 51 in the 60s. He holds a first-hand account of life undercover.
Just go to the mess hall, and then you go out to our building. We all had our individual areas that we worked at, and then just move into whatever mission we had that particular day. Back then, it was really rather boring, mostly just working with equipment and preparing.
That sounds like a kind of normal job. But what about the rumors of flying saucers?
If you looked at them sideways, it was just a long plane. But if you looked at it head on, the way it was shaped, it did look like a saucer.
So the saucers were actually sleek, silver, high-altitude planes that could fly almost 2,000 miles an hour. But what about the possibility of transcontinental underground tunnels that connect to secret facilities around the world?
The tunnels were over on the neighboring atomic testing site where they tested the nuclear rocket engine. Of course, it was radioactive, so everybody worked on the ground. You had your engine up on top, and I think that's where the tunnels started, because there never was any at Area 51.
What about those stories of the disappearing airplane runway?
When we had a satellite coming over, if we had planes on the outside, we had what we called hoot and scoot sheds, and we'd rush the plane into those sheds so that the Soviets couldn't see what we had there.
Soviet and American relations during the 60s were tense at best, with the constant threat of nuclear war. Area 51 remained confidential to avoid Soviet confrontation. So, how did these alien stories gain traction, when these things could easily be explained by covert Cold War tactics?
Conspiracy theories are a little bit like, at the psychological level, like paranoia in a person, right? A paranoid person is a person who is always looking for other people who are trying to hurt them in some way. I think conspiracy theories are essentially a form of collective paranoia.
Sociology professor at Boston College, Charles Derber, says conspiracy theories detract from the real issues people should be concerned about.
I think there's enough wrong in the world that you don't need to resort to all kinds of fancy, elaborate, paranoid or conspiracy ideas. I think it sort of takes away from a clear analysis.
Alien invasions are much more interesting than human threats. Hundreds of movies and books glorify these conspiracies. Blockbuster hit Independence Day shows Area 51 as the storage facility for alien bodies and spacecraft. The movie earned over $8 million at the box office. As long as human conflict and imagination exists, conspiracy theories will prosper. To avoid the dangers of conspiracy theories, Barnes, Fermani, and Derber agree people should be open and objective about what they choose to believe.
Be very skeptical. My way of thinking is it's a sort of intellectual laziness. There's a lot of real issues out there that if you really want to think there are big forces at play, there are. But you don't have to hatch conspiracy theories. You can just do a careful analysis of the forces that are actually governing the society, and you're not going to have to resort to conspiracy theories.
The real fact is, sometimes it's hard to figure out the real facts. In any case, some will continue to search for a more satisfying answer, even if the truth is right in front of them. Others may accept the first answer they hear. The Roswell UFO could be just as real as the alien invasion and War of the Worlds. Area 51 could be hiding extraterrestrial spacecraft. Either way, they make for some entertaining stories.
Now the smoke's spreading faster. It's reached Times Square. People are trying to run away from it, but it's no use. They're falling like flies. This is the end now.
For You Are Here, I'm Erin Connolly.